We're jam-packing kind of people.
Oh, yeah. You got to mamish plug in from 0 to 90 in 2 seconds, one of these vehicles. All right, vamos. Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning today's 3 prakim. Rambam, Hilchos, Ma'acholois, Asurais, prakim, Yud Dalid, Tezvav, and Tezayin, beginning with Perek Yud Dalid. Perek Yud Dalid is going to speak more about the shiurim of achila for which we're going to get punished, as well as the concept that we're only going to be chayiv when we eat it derech hana'ah. Perek Yud Dalid has 19 halachas, beginning with halacha aleph, says the Rambam. Kol isuri machal shabat leiram shiuram b'kizayis beinani. And this shiur is whether we are addressing the chiyuv of getting punished in a human court, malchus, whether a person, God forbid, is going to get kadis, whether a person is going to get misa b'dei shamayim, and also ukvar bigarnu shekol ha'mechuyev kadis or misa b'dei shamayim al ma'achol. They will also get malchus, obviously, if there was a proper hasra and edom, etc. Now, halacha beis, the shiur zeh, misas bezin for sure, but there isn't. I don't think you're going to have misas bezin.
The Rambam doesn't say it. It doesn't mention that in the list of things.
It doesn't mention it because there is no misas bezin for achila. You're going to have tevel, you're going to have truma, you're going to have kadis, yom kippur. You're not going to have misas. Halacha beis, the shiur zeh kol hashiurim. Halacha l'moshe misinayim. However, the Rambam paskins like Rabbi Zajac, like we pointed out many times, that for asun min ha'Torah lechol kol shehu midavar ha'asun. The prohibition is against the minimum amount. Elama avol elaloika ela al kizayis. However, even though there's no malchus biblically, the chachamim, they're going to give you malchus. Avol ve'im achal kol shehu pachas mikashir makanoise makas mardus. Okay, halacha gimel kizayis she'amarnu. This is very important. These nuances. Chutz mishel ben hashinayim. When you chew something, some food can get stuck in between your teeth. First of all, you have to have teeth. But if you have teeth, it has to have to be closed. But if the food is stuck there, that's not included in the kazayis. However, avol ma shel ben hachanichayim, whatever is in one's palate, not stuck in between the teeth. Says even though you didn't swallow it, it is going to be included. And if what you swallowed was a little bit less than a kazayis, but what's in between your palate, suzam, and you have a kazayis, you're going to be chayiv malchus. Why? That's the key. Because since, chanichayim is gums. Anywhere in the mouth, not in between the teeth. Since your palate has hana'ah from what you ate, it's not about what entered your stomach. And now based on that it's about the hana'as groinoi, right? The pleasure of your palate. Therefore, listen to this. What happens if a person has in front of them, guys, a half a kazayis, cook. They chew it, they swallow it, they right away bring it back up, a alligator. When they have hana'ah and they chew it and swallow it again, they're going to be chayiv malchus. Wow. Either the person has to be really shikir to enjoy it, or it's filled with mashke. I mean, but you have to have a hana. But it's shaykh, you swallow it and you right away spit it back up. Chayiv she'ein achiyuv ela al hanoas hagoden b'kizayis midavar ha'asu. Guys, this is also, you should know, shitas Rabbi Zajac. Machlal be passing like Rabbi Zajac, but we're on a roll with Rabbi Zajac today. Halacha daled. Kizayis chalavein aveloi pigel v'noisim chayitza behem. Shehilichoi b'chama v'nisma'et. In other words, it started out with the shiur, and now when you ended up eating it because of it being a chveis, it shriveled up. It's less than a kazayis, you're parted from the penalty. However, what happens if it began with a kazayis, shriveled up, then you put it back in the rain, so you can argue it's fake kazayis. It's not, because it originally was a kazayis. V'nispach back, chayom and all of kodesim malchus. That you began with a kazayis size, but your pachas kazayis b'tchila. But if it began less than a kazayis, and you put it in the rain, and it got inflated, swelled up, and now there's a kazayis and you ate it. Here the Rambam says taka asur, but ve'ein loikin olav. In other words, since in its original natural state, it did not have a kazayis, it's also, Rambam says it's also menatoida, but it's not a kazayis. Halacha, hey, with only two exceptions, mibsar nevela, imsar treifa. We had the words in the Rambam that treifa is the chilas nevela. Also, Isuri Nazar, as we'll explain when we learn about Nazar. So now that we have to have the hitzarfus only from the same type, let's define type. Let's begin. And not only their kernels, but also their flour. The 5 is wheat, spelt, wheat, barley, spelt, rye, and oats. The habatzeka shalem, including those that you make from them. How come it's start from the kazayas? It's considered one type, whether it's leisur chametz b'pesach, whether it is leisur chadash before the omer was offered, whether it is leisur ma'aser sheni yutrumais. Yeroeli continues the Rambam shekol achai b'truma, but shekol achai b'truma somaisres. In other words, truma somaisres we'll see shitas Rambam, but it's not only the 5 grains. Mitztaref l'kezayis b'tevel, because it's considered one lav, one shame. What's the shame? Don't have tevel. If a person has a piece of a nevela of an ox, a nevela of a set, a nevela of a tzvi. No, the Rambam is going from behema to chaya. Shame it start from the kazayas because you had a nevela. The same over here. Beautiful. What do you think, Shmuel? You eat. If a person ate a whole meal, how many malchus do they get? They ate many kazayas. Listen to this. Now we're going to define in a moment what a eating session is. But for one act of eating, even though you ate in many kazayas, if you were not a hasura in between, then the hasura is going to separate every kazayas. Chayev al kol asra v'asra afal pi sheyachala achas v'lo yitz. The halacha ches. Let's go. Let's define an eating session. Ha'oichel kaso oiram oikachardol mimacholas v'asuras. That means you ate much less than a kazayas. However, v'sha'am ma'at, you waited a moment. V'chazer v'achakachardol v'chein ad shel hishlom kazayas abissel nach abissel. So here's the rule. The Rambam Shita is that a loaf of bread is comprised of 6 eggs, not 8. Therefore, achilas pras, which means half, is 3 eggs. Whatever the share is on your watch with all of the different shitas, that is from the beginning until the end. If you had a kazayis, you'd start up a koil, and God forbid, or malchus or korban. Here you have Shuki, interesting. The Rambam writes a korban over here. That's your question in the beginning. No, it's not a question because Kodesh, yeah. So why does he mention it there? That's the question. However, you can argue that if you had no break, a guy was eating a trop, he was constantly eating. So you would have thought, since he's constantly eating, it should even start if it's not. Like the size of a mustard grain. So the din is if from the beginning until the end it took more than that time, you will put from the penalty. But again, guys, chatzi shir is also minatoida, but not malkis, not the kodesh, not korban. Now, halachates chen ashoyis revius shel stam yenu ma'at ma'at. Oy shehim chasa chametz b'pesach. Oy esachelev. He's just giving examples that since you liquefied it, you're like sipping on it a little bit, ma'at ma'at, or you're drinking dam. Again, just to point out, Rambam said dam, we pointed out kazayis. Here the Rambam is connecting dam to revius. And it's some people suggest B'shitas Rambam that the Rambam is being mechalik between the shir isur. The shir isur is a kazayis. When it comes to defining the time that you have, maybe it's about the revius, but it's sarachiyah. So here, im shah mitchila v'atzreif kadesh yisiyas revius. In other words, the revius is being used as the measurement for the zman. Mitztarfim, the im lavim mitztarfim. Okay, so we'll leave the blood with the tzarachiyah. Let's go back. No, Always kazais. And the Shir Achil, he mentioned kazais. See, I'm telling you, with the mile of learning Rambam, the way you were learning Rambam, which most people never did. So at least we remember. Used to be that no one remembered. Here we're learning 3 prakim a day. Even people like Kataka, you notice these. Okay, halacha yud. Kol ha'acholin ha'asurin ein achayiv aleim ad sheyirchel oisem derech hana'al. So even though the Rambam already introduced this Gavaldike concept that you're mitzdaref the kazayids that's in between your gums, right? You're only chayiv because of nehenas hagorain. Let's go further. However, chutz mibasar b'chalav b'kilei akerem. Why? The Rambam says why. Because by neither of them the Torah doesn't use the word achila. Elo hoitzi isur achilasan. We know you can't eat it b'loshen acheres. Either b'loshen bishul, like the Rambam said l'shitosoi, that the Torah says leisavashol. So nichlal and leisavashol is not to eat. And also ubeloshen hegdish when it comes to kli akerem. Pentikdash le'eser oisem va'afilu shloi kederach hana keitzar alach yudal. For example, harei imchas achelu b'gomoy. Person liquefied the fat and swallowed it k'shulcham. You know how hot it was? Your throat got burned. That's not called hana. It gave you tsar. Or if a person ate chelav chai you have no hana. Or if you mix something bitter into these, roish or lana, and you ate them all, they were bitter. You didn't have hana. After it rotted, in all of these cases, you will be pater. Unlike in contrast, a person added something that's bitter in a pot of cooked meat and milk, or God forbid, in wine, or behind kilei akerem, you're going to be chayiv. It's not about having hana. Also, halacha yud beis, doesn't matter. You were not eating, you were just gnashing in America. However, let's go weiter. Means even things that are asabana. So I guess in the schavin, I'll tell you what neschavin means. A person thought they're eating something that's mutter. Right? No. How's it balkarchay? You have to put together neschavin with balkarchay. Now give me an example. Think. Neschavin, balkarchay. So balkarchay, again, a person wants to eat a davar hamuter. So he's neschavin, but the asur was against his will, and it came in his hand something that's asur. So then the din is asur because he had kavana. But if he had mamish no kavana, that's the whole shittas Rab Shimon, davar she'ein neschavin, right? Muter. Weiter. Ha'oichel machel asur l'teyavain. Either because you have a desire. Yeah, that's normally a yetzer hara. Or God forbid a person was hungry, not hungry that they're pikuach nefesh. Doesn't make a difference. You're chai. However, and you might die. Now, extended from that, obviously, now let's get nuts. Ubar ubra, a pregnant woman that smelled a forbidden food, like Psar Kodesh. That was one of the 10 miracles that she never had that desire, theoretically. By Psar Chazir. Machilin oiso min Amerik. There's a concept called machilin oiso hakal kal tchila. Trying to minimize the issur. What's minimizing the issur? Don't eat the soup from it. In this, and the point is that if it's not the baby is in danger, the mother is in danger. If she desires something, she has a craving, and it's not fulfilled, she's bisakon. In this yashudai to mutar. Im la machilin oiso pachas bekashir. Furthermore, im lo inis yashudai to machilin oiso yashudai. So the concept of machilin hakal tal tchila is allowed to be said here because when we are buying time, we are not putting her in danger. She's already eating right away. In contrast, in a moment, it arouses the soul's desire. Vinegar, by me, smelling vinegar makes me into a chayla. I don't know about the chayla. Wow. So dinner a chayla that will be in danger if you won't eat it, then dinner kill butter. That's only because they are ill. And you're giving them something, you're not giving them everything right away. In contrast, someone who has a machlok called bulmus. Now, whether bulmus is some very strong hunger, bulmus is when the person is not only dizzy, but the person's vision is getting impaired. that's a siman that they have to get now what they need. Then machil noisa devar masor miyad achi yiru enov. The ein b'chazer on the level mutter. Elam amarim manimsa. But even in other words, you don't wait time. But even here, machil noisa yakal kal tchila. Doesn't mean you have to eat right away. You begin eating immediately. What's an example of when you have two options, you give that which is lesser problematic, right? The Mishnah says, don't weigh the weight of mitzvah. Sometimes you have to do that. So for example, tevel and avela, you give nevela. Why? Because the fact that the punishment of tevel is misveh de shamayim, punishment for nevela is malchus. There you go. Nevela is sviche shvius. Machil is sviche shvius. The Holy Issur there is medivrei seifrim, as we'll learn in the Chashmita B'Yoyv. What about tevel and shvius? Also, machil roisai shvius. Here you go. By the way, just to know, sviche shvius is a asay, and tevel is misveh de shamayim. Tevel and truma, both misveh de shamayim. So here you go. Tevel. Why is that? I'll give you an example. Because the choyle needs all of the food. The choyle needs all of the food. If you're going to separate the trumas and maasros, you want to have the shear that he needs. So now you give him tevel she'eino kadosh ketruma, even though it's mixed. In other words, gavaldik. No, it's truma. None of it can ever be eaten to an non-kohen. Tevel, after you're masakin it, most of it can be eaten. Interesting. Even though they both have the same penalty. Halacha yutches. Only the three exceptions. Either if both Yisurim come basachas, or if it's called an Isur Moisav, or it's called an Isur Koilo. And therefore, there are times when you do have Isur Halal Isur, a person can only eat one kezayis, and they can get 5 sets of malkis. Now, another detail when it comes to Hasra, because that's the rule of Hasra. Not you can't do it. You can't do it mitzad wat lav. And if it's connected to 5, the person who's masra has to be learned. To make the guy get, that's not to learn it, to make another person get chayiv malchus. That's terrible. But also, if it happened, Ketza. Keep going. Tomei she'achol kezayis, guys, halk up. Chaylev, that is noised from Kachim, on Yom Kippur, you're going to be chayiv because you ate chaylev, because you ate noiser, because you ate on Yom Kippur, because a tomei who ate kodesh, and because you had anah from Hegdish, and the Rambam will explain in the final halacha which one was chal first, and you'll take a see how it works. Ketza. When the behemoth was created, right away, we spoke this a few days ago. The chaylev was right away us, but it's mutter bahana. The Plato says, "Yei asa l'chol malach." The whole, even the gezeda not to do business with not kosher does not go to chaylev. Now, when a person is magdashit, nesor chelba bahana, right? That's clear. Since that part of the hegdish is chal, so b'chlal the isur of eating kachim is also chal. But hold on, since the chaylev was supposed to be put on the mizbeach, it was only asur lahedyet. Now, when it became noiser, what happens? None of it can be put on the mizbeach, not even the chaylev. So all of the animal was also asur mitzad noiser. That's a lahedyet. Prior to becoming noiser, nitma. So therefore, the isur of tuma also goes on the chaylev. Because Yom Kippur you can't eat other foods. Isur koilo is noisav isur b'chaylev. Very good. Chevra Perek Tezvav is people who today learn what they call smicha. I would say it's probably the most important Perek of the whole series. I know that it's good to learn all of it. What is that? No, I don't know what that is. But Perek Tezvav is going to be the way the Rambam is mesader, the whole idea of bittul, min b'minoi, min b'she'enoi minoi. It's mamish phenomenal. It gives such a clarity. We're also going to learn about the isur of being mevatel isur, that's midoraisa. We're going to be learning about the reicha, the Rambam Paskin's reicha lav nilsehi, but it's primarily a Perek all about how things become nullified and the big difference between min b'minoi, min b'she'enoi minoi. When do you have a level of bittul b'roif midoraisa? And the Chazal added the need of 60 or 100 or of 200. Perek Tezvav has 34 halachas, beginning with halacha aleph, says the Rambam. Davar asur shenes'arav v'davar muter. I would say this is most of the shilas today. You have this maybe because of basa b'chala, but sometimes something not kosher made its way into the kitchen. Bataruvas. There was a mixture. So the first thing you have to know is like this, guys. This is the foundation. This is the seder. Min b'she'enoi minoi. The rule is b'nois and tam. Guys, this is on a biblical level. Not bittul b'roiv. Min b'she'enoi minoi. When the be'en is here, the Rambam, by the way, says that tam ki'ikir midrabanan, as we'll see. Not tam. You had to admit the thing itself is, and obviously, if you can see it, take it out. You can't see it. You don't know which one it is. B'nois and tam. Umin b'minoi. If it's like and like, guys, we'll have examples for all of this. Like and like is worse. You can't say b'nois and tam. They both taste the same. So first of all, you have to know the two steps. Step number one is the oraisa. The oraisa is b'roiv. Roiv doesn't mean 51%. You have to know. Roiv means 2 against 1. Roiv means it has to be a third or less. 1 piece of not kosher, 2 pieces equal of kosher. So the Rambam Paskin is like Rava, right? That again, midoraisa, bittul b'roiv. Bittul b'roiv, not by min b'she'enoi minoi. Rava's bittul b'roiv is not min b'minoi, only b'min b'she'enoi minoi. Okay, that's it. Again, the Rambam doesn't even write over here that midrabanan you have to have b'nois and tam, which is b'shisha, because you have to get this. And halacha beis. Let's give examples of min b'minoi, min b'she'enoi minoi. Halacha beis. Chaylev hakaloyos, one of the 3 chalavim that are also midoraisa, that falls into grisen. It falls into beans. That's called, my friends, min b'she'enoi minoi. And v'nimoya hakoil. So then, like, min b'she'enoi minoi, midoraisa v'nois and tam. Let's say you have a goy. The Rambam already said you don't even have to have the professional cook. Then im toyam and asagrisen. Obviously, a not yid. If he tastes the beans and he doesn't taste any chaylev, you can't remove it. That's why he gives these examples. It's nimoyach, it got melted into. However, and the word is right? Tam keikir is not minatleid according to the Rambam, but you have the chaylev is in there. Harei elo asuna minatleid. But in a case where you don't have the thing itself, you only have the tam from it. That would be, for example, that you cooked it in a pot that previously was used for chaylev. That's a great example. We learned that what went into the pot is not the mamoshes of the treif. It was the tam. We passed the Rambam Paskins. Tam keikir is not minatoider. But harei lasurim only with divrei seif. Keitzar hu mamoshay gavaldik. Kegoing. Shohoyim min achelav kizayis, b'chol sholosh beitzim min ataroivus. Im achel min agrisim elu kisholosh beitzim. Not kisholosh beitzim is based on what we learned in the last chapter. For you to get malchus, for you to be chayv kodesh here, and malchus, and korban, you have to eat. Im achel agrisim elu kisholosh beitzim. Hoyel v'yesh behem kizayis min achelav, because you're only going to get chayv when you eat pras, which is 3 beitzim. You have to make sure that when you eat the 3 beitzim, you get what's going on over here. Eating that, you're eating in there the kazayas. Then you'll get malchus. Shaharei tam tama isur umamashe. However, ochal pachis mishalosh beitzim. In other words, you don't have in it a kazayas shal isur. So what is that? You didn't need to share. What did we learn in the last chapter? Even though less than the share, you're not chayiv malchus, you're going to get malchus marbles. You taste the chaylev. So another thing of the Rambam of tam keikir. In other words, it's called tam because you don't have the shiur. So there's the tam. Okay, so guys, it's simple. Min b'she'enoi minoi b'nois and tam. If you have the shear, it's nice and tam, chayiv malchus. Midoirais. Simple. Now let's go with min b'minoi. And the Rambam Gavaldik in the beginning didn't say min b'minoi, you need shishin, which you need at least, or we'll learn by truma 100, by arla 200. He begins by saying min b'minoi, bittul b'roiv. Minatoyra. Halachadal. No fal chaylev kalois l'chaylev al yom. Chaylev kaloyos, fats of the kidneys, that's the chaylev that you have to be menachem. Chelav aliyah is mamish good, kosher. And they all melted together. If they didn't melt together, take it out. But you can't take them out. It's famished. Im hoya chelav aliyah. Guys, roiv doesn't mean 51% versus 49. Kishnayim. The kosher has to be at least double of. Let's use the words of ratio because we're going to learn soon the Rabbanan, the 60 to 1, the 100, ratio of 2 to 1. Then, hadei hakoil mutin min hatoyr. Afilu chatichas nevela shenesarva b'shtei chatichas shel shchuta. So it's not that nimoyach hakoil. You have the pieces. You don't know which piece is what. Hakoil mutin min hatoyr. Now the Rambam is not saying that you can eat them all together. I know when the Machaber says that you can eat all three of them, not at the same time. The Ramah is even more machmir regarding that, but let's not get into it. The Rambam is not addressing how we will eat them. The concept that min b'minoi batel b'roiv b'natoyr. Avol, here the Rambam says, and what the Rambam says is b'payal mamish, because we are a Yidden that follow the Rabbanans. Avol, v'divrei soifrim hakor lasu. It has to be mamish nullified. A lot of nuance. Now, but kama you sort of davar ha'asr me'yived ha'otzim me'yutai, the Rambam puts it all together. Not just shishim. He says sometimes shishim, sometimes meya, sometimes a masayim. See how it's worded? That's the way we should word it. Beautiful. Halacha nimsas lamid kumtois. Shkol yisrael shabbat Torah ben yisuri malchus. Ben Yisuri Kodesh, Ben Yisuri Yano. If they got mixed with Macholei Hamuter, he's reviewing it because people, they learn it on a different Seder. He's giving us this Seder. Min b'she'enoi minoi. You need to have nois and tam. And I know, guys, that we already learned that generally nois and tam happens when it's a ratio of 60 to 1. We know that. But it doesn't have to be that way. Min b'minoi. He's explaining you can never know whether it's tasting because everything tastes the same. The chalev and the chalev taste like chalev. What's the exception? Because of the Chomer Avodah Zarah, and by the Chomer Avodah Zarah even goes to yain stam, which only a hashash or tevel. Tevel is something she'efshel l'saknoi. Mepnei zeh oisrem b'minam. Even b'chol shein, it's not batel min b'minoi b'roiv, v'shaloi b'minoi. Even these items, if it's shaloi b'minoi, guys, remember this. Even though it's an avodah zarah, b'noisem tam k'sharei yisurim. Halacha zayin keitza tipas yain nesach shenafal olel kamo chavya shel yain. That's called min b'minoi. It's not batel at all. Hakol asa k'mash yizbar. Achin koi shel yain tevel shem zarah b'chavis hakol tevel. It's not batel. Now when you have a barrel. So here what you do. Here you have a solution. Let's go Allah ches. Pay the shvius. Guys, pay the shvius before the Zman HaBiur. Afal pi she'im nesara b'minam. B'chol shehu. She'im nesara b'minam b'chol shehu. Or v'shaloi b'minam b'noisen tam. Einam b'chlal isurei Torah. It's not asur, guys. Pay the shvius is not asur. Pay the shvius, for example, before the Zman HaBiur. But there are limitations on them. Also, those limitations will go to everything. You have to eat it because shvius. You can't take it out of the Holy Land. We'll learn all the dinim in the right place. Point is that Peter shvius, let's go, it's not an Isser Chefza. If you want, you can word it that way. It's there are limitations on the person how to eat it. That's not asur. Halacha tes, chametz b'Pesach. Okay, so in other words, Peter Shvis is in a different category. Now, Chametz v'Pesach, Afa Pishu Misuri Toira. Also, Eina Mechlalos Elu. They won't be included in these rules that we're learning. Why? Lefisha Eina After Revis Sunul Oilu. Elo Achara Pesach Tiakol Revis Muteres Koshiviyanu. Lefikach, you have something Chametz v'Pesach even more than Yayin Nesach. By Yayin Nesach, we said, right? By Tevel, we said that the min b'she'enoi minoi will also be batel b'nois and tam. When do we say that yain nesach is not batel min b'minoi? Chametz b'Pesach, never batel. Not the minoi, not the she'ena minoi. Lefika choyse b'choshu, b'minoi mim she'ena min. Halacha yud. V'od l'tvar chadash tavi yishana, m'lifnei oimer chadash. Mamish like Chametz b'Pesach, after the oimer, you can eat it. I said it's b'chol shu sharei yesh lo matirin shel achar ha'omer yuter hakoil. Now, I want you to know that in halacha yud we're making tfuah chadasha like tevel that b'minoi it asers, but b'she'enoi minoi I want you to know b'she'enoi minoi it's only in b'nois and tam. It's not like chametz v'pesach. And by the way, the whole Perek design will be an expounding of these little part of Perek Tezvav. The Rambam is giving you the exceptions. We're going to have a whole chapter, which is huge, about the exceptions. But here we're going to right away go back to the rules. Like Isser Muktzeh. It'll be up to Ela filo echad bekam alaf min a bottle sharei yesh le derech shiyuter ba kegoin hegder shomais shein v'chayitz behen halacha yud aleph avol orla v'chile yakedem v'chele v'dam chayitz behen v'chein trumas here nasna chachamim mem shir she'ein behem derecheter l'chol adam l'chol adam. No, trumas and maises can be eaten to a coin, but only to a coin. A yisrael can never eat it. So there is a bittul. We're going to see the bittul is not going to be b'shish. The bittul will be b'meya. But at some point, it's so insignificant. Now, halacha yid beis yira ali shafilo davar sheish lematinen. A side of chametz v'pesach, guys. Im nesara b'she'enoi minoi v'lenasam tam mutar lo yiyazeh sheyesh lematinen chamer mitevel sharei efshar l'saknai in afal pikein. When it comes to tevel, we just said that shaloi b'minoi b'noisam tam. Chametz v'pesach. I'm saying that's what I said before. That halacha tes is only for chametz v'pesach. That it's not even batel min b'she'ein mina. That's different. Since the Torah uses the words kol machmetzes any, but think of chechmira by kamei shabiyan. Okay, so now guys, we got it good. Min b'minoi is batel b'roiv, but midrabanan that has to become very insignificant. Now we're going to Allah Yud Gimel. When it comes to Truma, or Truma Smaiser, or Chala, or Bikurim, it has to become insignificant in a ratio of 100 to 1, not 99 to 1. You have to have 100 to 1. And furthermore, in addition, you have to separate a portion and give it to a kohen. In other words, even though you have a barrel of Truma Shmolin, it falls into 100 barrels of Chulin. You don't know which one is which, even though you can have all of them. But the Kohen had the value of one. Give one to the Kohen. Another thing is that as we'll see more details later. In other words, if a Chatzi saw of one Isur of Truma, a Chatzi saw of a Chala, let's go, fell into 100 saw, only then it's good. But if a Chatzi saw and Chatzi saw fell into 99, what are you going to argue? You're going to argue that you have Keneged Truma, you have more than 100. You have Keneged, the other one, more than 100. But Keneged that Davar Ha'asur here, you don't have that ratio. You're not going to have Bittul. Gewalt. Geen Prusa Shalechem. Geen Prusa Shalechem Hapanim that fell into Prusas of Chulen. Here, when will they say that that's Min B'minoi? Even though Midai Raisa, my friends, it's Batul B'roi. Midarabanan, you need to have 1 in 100. Ketzad saw Kemach Me'echad Me'elu. I saw Mikulan. Shenaflu Lemeya saw Kemach Shal Chulen. Then it's Arev HaKoil. So Meirim in HaKoil Sa'ach is connected to Shenaflu. Again, you have to remove one. All right, but Hashan Mutal Chaladam. If it falls into less than 100, then everything becomes Meduma. Everything becomes Meduma means only a coin can eat it, but when you sell it to the coin, so other than the one saw or the watchir that you have to get for free, the rest, he'll only pay the lesser price that people pay for Truma. That's, as we'll learn more pratim of what do you do with this mixture. Halacha Yud Dalet. Here you have to have a greater amount of bittul. They are only oilen in a ratio of 200 to 1. And here again, if you have a sum of Arla and some of Kili Akarem, you have to have 201 against both of them together. However, unlike Matnas Kohuna, that even when there is bittul, you have to give that amount to the kohen. Arla and Kili Akarem don't belong to anyone. So once you have the bittul, you can have all of it. The Einat Tzarech Laharim. Ketzad, for example, Revi'ah shal yain arla, or of kili akenim. Shehoiso revi'as mitzarefes mishneim. Or you had a half and half, but you have a revi'as. Shanof l'toich mosayim revi'ah shal yain hakol muter. And now that it's batul, ve'ein tzarich laharim klum. But nafla l'pachas mi mosayim, since midrabanan it's not batul, none of it is allowed, even b'hana. Now, he says passion because truma side of the kedusha of the truma, it's also the property of the kohen. Finish. And arul and kila kenem are not the property of anyone. Now the Rambam adds another layer. Now that we established, you only have to give it to the kohen because it's mamana kohen. If you have truma of something that kohanim don't care about, he gives an example of trumas hakelisim, some sort of low-grade figs, or charuvim, or so'idim sheba edom. They're moichel. They don't care for it. Therefore, if it's not batul, you can't have it. Meaning a yisrael, if it's a truma. But now that it's batul, it's like arlo in the tzarich lahar. Halacha tes zayin. Now, why did the chachamim see that by arlo and kilei akerem it's double? Because they're asa b'hana. Why did the chachamim say that by truma you have to have a bittul of one and mayo? You have to appreciate the Rambam. In other words, we're going to learn in a moment. There are psukim here, but the Rambam clearly kept the yisoid of the spedic is min b'minoi is batul b'roiv. This type of 60 or 100 min b'she'ena minoi you have to have b'nois and tam. We know that 60 we'll see from the nazir. We'll see the source on the plate for the shishim. But here it's about a different type of bittul midrabanan. Where did I get there? Trumas meiser. Think about the logic. How much is trumas meiser from everything? It's 99 to 1. Because meiser is 10 from 10. 10% of 10% is 1%. 1% is 1 out of 100. The ratio 99 to 1. And the fact that if you don't take off trumas meiser, everything is still tabel midoraisa. It's not batul. So you go one above that, 100 to 1. As it says at the end of Parashas Koirach, es mikdushoy mimenu. That's the meaning of that pasuk. The Trumas Meiser fell back in, everything is holy again. So that's the edge of the limit. If you would be a little bit more cool in, it would yet become bottled. Halacha Yud Zayin. Sha'ari Sodusha Matoyre Kulim. Whether it is Psar Shkatzim V'Ramasim V'Chelu V'Dav V'Chayitza B'Hem. Here again, Min B'Minoi Midrabanan Shiyuram B'Shishim. Ketzad Kezayis Chelev Koloyois, which is one of the Cholavim that's also Midoy Raisa that falls into 6D Kezaysim of the Chelev of a tail Hakol Mutter. But if Nafal Apachas Mishishim Hakol Os Midrabanan. Chenim Nafal Kaso Oire Chelev. Doesn't matter, in other words, he's emphasizing it's not because it's a Kezayis, it's a Davar Chashav. What about you have a So'ira? Oh, you have to have 16 So'irim amount. V'chein Mishara Yisurim. V'chein Shuman Shel Gid. Now, guys, Shuman Shal Gid is what? The Rambam says, Asam Midrabanan. Shenova Gedei Shal Basar, Nisharan Oisoi, B'Shishim. However, Ve'ein Shuman Hagid Min HaMinyan. In other words, since you have to have 60 aside of the Shuman Hagid, even though it's only Asam Midrabanan, it's not going to be part of it. Alpha Pishu Shuman Hagid Amid Meim, Kamishabiano, Hoyel Begid Anosha Better B'Fnei Atzma, here, Echminu B'Kisu, the Torah. Unlike other Derabanans, if you remember, the Rambam said, we learned this week, a few days ago, there it's the ratio 59 to 1 by Derabanans. Gid Anosh is unique. Hagid Atzmai, B'chlal cannot be counted, not because it's an Asr, because there's no tam in it. And also Ve'eno Oiser. She'ein Begidin Ben Oisim Tam.
So, how much is the 1 and 60?
Huh? Doesn't make a difference. That's his whole point. Whatever amount of the Isur fell in, min b'minoi midoraisa, ratio 2 to 1. Midorabanan, in most things, 60 to 1. He said kazais v'kesoira. There he was speaking about malchus. That's right. Halacha Yudches. No, come on. Of course. And the Rambam is going to make, whenever you can discern the issue, you have to take it out. Then there's no noise and time or anything. That's another issue. In other words, there, once you took that out, that's another detail. Okay, right. Halacha Yudches. Aval Tachal, the other, that what? Shenis Bashal Basar, And what did we mention, guys? That what's the problem with the udder? Midoiraisa, the milk that's in the udder, cholav, with an animal that was geschachten, that I'm never said that explicitly, but it's implied in the Mesa, Bechlal is not called cholav. Midrabanan, if you don't, midrabanan, you can't have it. So kachal shon is bashal mabasar prior to you removing the milk, b'shishim. But what do you need bittul against? The kachal itself can be min aminyan. Very good. Halacha you test. Beitza shenim zebay efrayach. Shenish leka in beitzim hamutarais. It was cooked together with permitted beitzim. So here we go. We'll see in a moment, guys, that eggs, they don't expel, but in the frayach expels taste. Im oisa im shishim va'achas vihi. Look at this chumrah. Now you need to have ratio of 1 to 60. You need a total of 62. I'm going to use the word 61 to 1. Yeah, 1 to 61. Only then are they motoris. They added the chumrah. They added 1. Why? That's, guys, all of this is midrabanan, don't forget. Min b'minoi. Also, what heck you receive for b'shiyur? Avol, in contrast, beitzas oif tamei, that was cooked with beitzai oif tar, in the case where you cannot discern them, because even though the Rambam said clearly, all of the samarim that we had, that one point is whiter, one point is chad, and it's yellow on the inside and white on the outside, it doesn't mean it's kosher. There, it could be kosher, could be not. You don't know what it is. So it got mixed now. The bechlal lo yasra oisam. In other words, an egg, not an afroich, is not poiletas tam. We're speaking about an egg, of course, in the shell. Beitzas efroyach does expel tam. Now, if they were beaten together, that means you peel them, and now you made a big scrambled eggs. It's mixed. No, now you have to know, can you have all of them? Can you not have all of them? They're only bottle.
So what is it, 61 versus
60? 61 to 1 is only by the Efroyach. There's a mixture here. You don't know what is what. So it's only bottle. The Chumrah, a beri b'fnei atzmai, needs to have that additional one. Okay, halacha chafal. If it's cooked together, it's not expelling any taste. But if you want to eat all of them, he writes it at the end of halacha chav. In other words, if there's an taruvas, it's only going to be bottled 60 to 1.
So if I have a whole pot, of eggs,
we say that
it's okay?
We say when you cook, do today, you cook eggs. Let's say in the good old days when things were taka pregnated and the blood sprat made it asim midoiraisa. When you found in the pot one egg that had a blood strap, you didn't throw out the other hard-boiled eggs because of this din, because it's not toilet tam. But if you know one has a blood strap, you're not gonna, you can't find it and it's mixed. You have to have the bittul of shishim against one. Min b'minoi midrabanan is bottle b'shishim. Halacha chafal. Where did they get it from? The part that's separated from the aisle that the nazir brings, which is the cooked forearm, the zuraya. The cooked forearm is around the 60th of the entire animal, and it's all cooked together. And then it's called zuraya b'sheila. And after you cook it together, then you give the kohen the zuraya, and you eat the rest. Kasha, that which belongs to the kohen is like it's like truma. How can you eat the rest? The answer is because it's bottled. Now, min b'minoi v'davar acher shenes arvu, which is also common. For example, you have a pot that has chelav alya, which is mutter. You have beans that's mutter. Now, chelav alya and grisan are not the same types. Not the same types. But what's the beauty? You know what the beauty is? That min b'she'enoi minoi. What did the Rambam begin in the Perek? What is it bottle? B'noisem tam. Shishim is noisem tam. So it goes together. So if you have now a drop of chelav kaloyos, now against the chelav kaloyos, if you combine together the alya and the grisin, you have 60 to 1. Good. Because you have, listen, the chelav and the chelav really would be bottled in much less. But you have to have midrabanan and shishim. You have shishim. The chelav and the grisin, it cannot give the tam. It's not giving the tam. Even though you have some Chaylev, that's asura. But you combine them. Venim chakoil and benasa guf echad. Hoil chaylev ha'aleph. That's agrees in kilum guf echad. Even though they're two minim, yes, lakula, you can be meshayir the chaylev kolois, which is problematic against the ratio, both the grisin and the alyan. Im hoya echad meshishim muter. Sharei I efshar kamla amid al tam. That's the nakuda. It's not lois and tam. Let's go. Hamurim in ayil. It doesn't give the tam.
So look at it as min.
I'm looking at it as both, and that's what I said. Min be'ena minoi b'nois and tam. Min be'minoi midrabanan b'nois and tam. You have lois and tam. It's not lois and tam. You went beyond lois and tam.
You wouldn't know if it's nice and tam if it's the same.
That's right, but that's why we're saying Echad Meshishim happens to be nois and tam. Echad Meshishim loses the tam. It fixes the nois. It's no longer nois and tam. Halacha Chav Gimel. And by the way, that's what we do nowadays. The whole time you have to. You must start off everything. If a drop of tray falls into the pot, what do we say? Everything that's in there. Everything. The meat, the oil, the spices, that's what we do nowadays. For example, there you need to have 1 in 100. Or kili akerim, or early, you have to have 200. You include all of the mutter, even though the mutter is minoi or eina minoi, include it all together. Halacha chavdalik, kishmashanim b'chol yisurim, b'mishishim b'mesayim, or meshanim b'merek. You include the moisture, the soup, and the spices. And not only that, even that which is nivla in the kedera. And how do you do that? How do you estimate that? If you can include everything, including masha nivla, and that which I want you to know, the beliyos and kalim, that's a whole different topic. But many people argue, I'm speaking just theoretically, that the type of kalim we have now is very unlike the kalim we had then. The types of metals are different. The beliyas are for sure less. I heard radical opinions, not halacha l'maisa, people that say, you don't have to do hagala the way they did it then. Just to be, how are you mashayid it? And then the kalim were more porous. Okay, let's go back. Also, guys, this is gavaldik. Yeah, this is, you chazir this 1 or 2 more times, and you get the shita Rambam clear. Now we're going to go into the concept of being mevatel isa lechatchila, and the Rambam shita that you're not allowed to be mevatel isa midoraisa lechatchila. You are allowed to be mevatel isa midorabanan.
Can I just ask about that? And how do we learn from Chazay and Shaykh? Isn't that being mevatel isa lechatchila? The whole thing is Chazay and Shaykh.
First of all, not Chazay and Shaykh. You're talking about the Zroya b'Sheila.
Yeah, what do they call it?
The Zroya b'Sheila.
Yeah. The ram.
The Torah says to give him a Zroya b'Sheila. The Torah is saying give it to him. It's different. It's not a davar also. The Torah says to cook it all together. The Torah says.
Yeah, that's pretty lechatchila.
Yes. Okay. Good. Halacha fei. Also levatel yisur shel Torah lechatchila. But even by Torah in Beitel, arei muter. But since midrabanan you shouldn't have done it. Okay, you're not allowed to do it. Afal became konsu oisoi. Guys, konsu oisoi means you cancel the guy who did it b'meizit. That's it, and no one else. Since it's all knas, only on the guy that did it. Now, what about to the guy for whom you did it? There's a big discussion. Even though he didn't do anything. Some people say that the Rambam will also hold that to him it's asur. Okay, halacha chava. You have to know what that means. Why am I saying that? If they make products today and they're mavatal the isur, they made it for the consumer. So if you're going to include the knas also on the person for whom it was made, then you got yourself a problem if it wasn't isur doirais. Halacha chava. Right? What's the problem? What does Arlen mean, guys? 200. Yeah, the Rambam could have said the same thing in 199. He meant you didn't have the ratio. And even chutz laaretz, halacha l'meishim Sinai, he said. So therefore, lo yovi be'asa acheret tzvi tzaref, kadesh talach l'masai. But ve'im ava v'asa came, hakoil mutar. No, he already said, not for everyone. Just the concept. Now, however, in contrast, Bishur Shul Devrei Mevatlin or Isalachatchila, Allah Chav Zayin Keitzad, Cholov, Shanav Likteda Sheish Bei B'Sar Oif, milk, B'Sar Oif, we learned this Midrabanan. Right? Rabbi Yossi holds b'chlal, it's not us. Then also tam b'kedeira. Marabol b'saroif acher. Keep on adding b'saroif. Achi yivat tam. V'chein chalchei yitzah b'zeh. Appreciate what we're learning over here. No, it's here we're learning about min b'shein and minoi.
You can't put the chalav in the chatchila. But if the chalav in,
of course, don't put a chalav. Yeah, for sure.
You say you're allowed to do this because it's the Rabbanah?
Yeah, Asar. With Rabbanah. That's what the Rambam, we're learning the Rambam. Okay, halach achav ches. I want to tell you one thing. All of the kashrus agencies, they use this to the bone. It's not a kula. Yeah, they rely on these things. Halach achav ches. Kvar beyanu she'im nosam dover ha'asar b'tamid dover amuter nesar hakoil. Another nuance. When the whole issue of tam is only if it's to the benefit of the total taste. But if it's called a tam pogum, aval pogum zeh ha'asar lamuter b'psidei tamoi harei zeh muter. When sometimes things are plaguing in the beginning and later it makes it better, or sometimes now it's good, but later it's going to become better. In both of these cases, if there is a time where it's adding a tam good, then it's usher, as we'll see in a moment. We'll unpackage this more. Halacha chavtes. Then you can give it to a kohen. If you can taste the truma, hakol meduma. Bilchas is bar dina meduma, like we mentioned. Part of it you sell, part of it you have to give. Again, how did we begin this Perek? You need nice and tam. You need nice and tam. So give it to a guy. Again, the Rambam doesn't speak about the kfela arma'a, which is the Lashon Chazal, which means a professional cook that people understand. Shitas Rambam. Every guy has the months. Because it's like a milsa David Ligluya. He's not going to lie. He doesn't know you're not going to taste it. Or if he says yes tam, however, it's not a good taste. Truma meduma means that the ratio of the truma you have to give to the coin. The rest you can't eat, but you can sell it. But truma had lesser value.
Rabbi, but you saw the bugs in the stew, and you saw them, and they're bittle now. But you saw them, and you're going to be eating the bugs.
So Aaron, like this, Aaron, every time you see the isur, you have to remove it. When you see it, you have to remove it. If you don't see it, if it's nice and kamel of gam, which is how we look at shkotzim, we look at the tam. Yeah. Now, I'm just saying this because you begin to read now the Meshugana world that they're claiming that there's going to be no meat soon and how the new meat is going to be bugs and how great it is. I don't know if it's a bad tam. Chazal said it's a bad tam. For people, we're behemoths. Everything changed. For people, wheat was good. For animals, barley is good. Today, for people, white flour is good. For behemoths, bran. Today, the fact that bran is a big thing. Could we have a dinner of a behemoth today? And maybe for us, maybe shkotzim have a good time. I don't know. The rules, we're learning the rules. If it gives a tamil of gam, you got no problem. When you take the fly out of your soup, even if you have it in your spoon and you don't have shishim kenegdai, it says in Shulchan Aruch you can have the rest. Take out the ikir, take out the mamoshes, take out the bug. And if you have less than 60, even if you have less, you can eat it. Less than tam of gam. If it's less than tam of gam. Okay. Then
or if there's no taste at all, like a bug in your lettuce, you're probably not tasting it.
Of course you're tasting it. That's the Chazal saying that if the ratio is less than 60, you will taste it. You will taste that bug. The question is, will it? It's
definitely smaller than 60. But the point is, how do these bugs are microscopic? You only see them.
How many do you have? How many do you have? A few of them. Okay. Let's go into an achbar, a rat. Now, guys, this is telling how the Torah looks at beer. A rat in beer is geschmack. That's how disgusting beer is. If you remember the first time you had beer, or vinegar. I hate vinegar. It works. A rat in chaymetz, it complements the beer. So you have to remove the rat, Aaron. You have to remove the be'ed. But now you have the problem of the tam. Obviously, if it's cold, it doesn't give off tam. But if it was cooking in the vat, or it was, it was sitting there for 24 hours or more. There's such a chashash. But if a rat falls into wine or into shaman adavash, then mutter. Because we consider that tam pagum. Shekol elu tzrich lias mivusamim, and this a mouse, not my mouse, the wild mouses. Masrichan or mafsatamon. Okay, halacha lamed beis. Yidi shetzala by bechelboy, which should not have been done. So you roasted it, and you did not first remove the chalev. So the problem is chalev permeates it all, even the farthest most part. The oznoi, remember Rashi, it just means that fat goes everywhere. Mefafeya bekuloi. Also lechel, even the end of the ear. Shachelev livla beivara, v'mashbiach, and chalev gives tam. Lefikach, since that's the issue, if the animal was nabachaz as a kochush, it was a skinny animal. So therefore we say, no, you take the animal, you eat it until you come close to the chalev. Now what's the problem, guys? The gid hanasha you remove. The problem is the chalev of the gid is also midrabanan, but that's not enough to be mefafeya b'kuloi. Then you could eat it until you get near it, and then you throw it out. And you didn't remove the chutin and the karoimai so asumas. So then, if you did remove the fats, those rabbinic prohibited little membranes don't permeate everywhere. Once you eat the animal, what is that called? No, you have these things on the spit today.
Oh, it's sweet.
And you just cut it until when you come to the davar also you stop. Don't be concerned about it. Now, halacha lamed gimel is reyach. Another important din. The Rambam paskins, guys, reichalav milsi. This is midrabanan. Don't do it at the same time, even though they're not touching, because the reyach of the asur enters the heter. But that's only lachatchila. The Rambam holds reichalav milsi. That's a big kula. So therefore, if you did it, today would be tantamount you cooking milchiks and fleishiks in the same oven, baking. Don't do that. But if you did it, he holds areza mutter. Huh? This is min b'minoi. Yeah. Well, min b'minoi you need to have roiv. It doesn't matter. It's nothing. It doesn't matter. Even if you don't have the bittul b'roiv, you don't have the ratio 2-to-1. Reicha, don't do it. And if you did it, it's mutter. And because shahareach eino oiser ve'eino oiser ala atzmishal isur. Final halacha lamed daled. What's the exception? San nevela moliach. Here's a big exception. So, guys, the nevela was salted. You have to halk up. Shenivlal, they got mixed together with basar shchuta that was not salted. So here we say all of the shchuta. The Rambam is very machmir. Everything is nesa. Sharei kamsis hanevela will be nivlas b'gupsar hashchuta. The ef shelaamid ba'loy alatam aloy alashir. No, it's even the Rambam doesn't say what would normally you need to have. 60. Very good. Not even 200 helps. People wonder. It's very machmir, but why? Just why? Because the salted was the nevela, dafk, and because the shchuta was not salted. Another example, the chain.
Is he assuming that it's fully permeates into the
mamish, and there's no bittul at all. Yeah, very good. The chain psad dok tamei moliach. The tamei was salted, and you have the kosher fish was unsalted. That's called tafel. That's what tafel means. It's blah. Tar nesor because the tzir goes everywhere. But avlamaya moliach tar tafel the opposite. Lenesor moliach shahat tafel. That's the word shahat tafel. Boilea min hamoliach. Dog tamei shekavashoy if it was pickled with dam tar, so then sir hakoil asur elim kain hayahatomei echad mimosayim min hatar. You have to have. The Rambam is adding another place.
What about the fish itself?
He's saying for the tzir, since it's something very sharp, everything else very good. You would have to have l'chayda echad b'shishin. Here you're more machmir because it's sharp, but you only have to have the ratio of the worst of 200-to-1 and not more. Once you have 200-to-1, you're good. Chavra perek tezayim. We're going to go in tremendous detail, all of the exceptions where there isn't bittul, and Shitas Rambam, remember this, that's one nakuda from the whole Perek design. All of the cases where there is no bittul, it's only midrabanan. Let's go. Perek design has 35 halachas. Halacha aleph. Kol ashiru ma'elu shnas b'chalam b'davar asur she'esayim min hamot. Everything that we said before. That what, Gabra, remember. Min b'minoi, guys, min b'minoi, that's one thing. Beroiv, min ha'toira. Min b'minoi, midrabanon, you have to have shishim, meya, or mosayim. All of that. And once you have that ratio, then you're good. It's hakoil bottle. That's only b'shaloi hoyo hadavar ha'asur. It's not a machametz, it's not a leavening agent. The davar ha'asur is not a metabel, it doesn't give out spice. It's not considered something that's chashuv, as will be defined. Shu oimet kamay shuhu. Guys, a davar chashuv, once you mince it up, it's no longer chashuv. It will be but when it's shu oimet kamay shuhu. However, in contrast, guys, everything now is midrabanan. It's a big chumrah. If the davar ha'asur, which you had against it the ratio of 500 to 1, more than it doesn't matter how much, is machametz or metabel, or it's called a davar chashuv, then oiser b'chol shuhu. And I want you to know again, just to remember, min ha'toira, it's bottle only beroif. Even though it's a metabel and a machametz. The Rabbanan said normally you need to have the other shiurim. Here they said the other shiurim will help. The Rabbi used to speak a lot about this in the Likud of the Rambam in the context that Yidden throughout the Golus, why did the Chachamim come along? We're not bottom. Like, why were the Yidden not bottom? So as we went into Golus and it was the Davar Ha'asur became more and more problematic. I'm sorry, and it became harder. So there needed to be a psak din in the Torah that will never be bottom. That I've explained how we're the Machametz, we influence the whole world. We're Metaben, we add spices to the whole world. And all of these things were given later. And with Davar Chashuv as a means that no matter what, we should never be bottom. That's why Minat Torah was never needed. Okay, let's go back. And we're never Davar Shesh Matirin. Very good. Very good. All of these concepts. Halacha, Beis, let's go Freilach, Ketzat. So Shal Chitim, Shal Truma, this yeast, and it falls into Isas Chit and Shalchulen. This yeast is making the Isa into bread. Meduma means like when it comes to Truma, it's not Asur. Meduma means, like we mentioned, only a kohen can eat all of it. Do you have to gift all of it to the kohen? No, you don't. But the Truma is never going to be bottled. The Chen Tavlon Shal Truma Shal Der Schulen. V'yesh Bam Kedei Lo Tabel. V'heim Min Achulen. Right, min deminoi, guys, min deminoi. He wants to point it out. Hakol meduma, even though this the Tovlan are only echad me'elef. Afilu echad me'elef leibat. The chain so arsha kili akedem that falls into an isa. Oy tivalim shul Allah techak deira hakol osem amno halachi gimel. The next one, davar achashuv shu oisem b'minoi b'chol shuhu are shiva devarim that the Mishnah gives, and these are the shiva devarim. That once the Torah gives that psak din, that's every place, everywhere. But the concept we can expound, as the Rambam will say, egoizei perech, nuts from perech, rimoine bedan, the pomegranate is from a place called bedan, any closed barrel of wine, chilfois, terodin, beet, shoots, for an Ashkenazi kid, borscht, the kilchei, kruv, cabbage heads, the last Yavanis, Greek squash, and home-baked bread, in contrast to bakery baked bread, as much as they say their bread is the garnish. Homemade is homemade. Halacha dalet ketzad rimoy nachod from the rimoyim of the place called Badon. I know that in Schweiz everything is Badon. That's the shoya orlam, and it got mixed with the thousands of rimoyim hakolaser banon. The chen chavis shemushiyan orla akili akedem that got mixed with kama Allah from chavis sumis hakolaser banon. The chen shar shevadavon. Let's go further. Next thing is called a davar chashuv. Now, how do you make a davar chashuv? Right? We're going to see how the Rambam limits the davar chashuv. Esher darke limnois, kol shadarke limnois. Okay, here we go. Any piece of meat, it's called a davar chashuv. If it was not minced up, means it will become bottled even with Rabbanan once it's no longer a shtickle. Oy shol besar behema, oy chaya, oy dog hatmeim, but it's a chaticha. And you go today to Pat's, you're going to pay for that. It's $94, something, a piece. And it's not even that big, but it's a Shenes Arba, Bechama Alofim. It got mixed with thousands of kikorais, Hakol Asad. Ad Sheyagbiya Oisachatichana, guys. If you can recognize it, and you can remove it, then you only have the problem with the taste that came from it. That's not davar choshev. No. Now, what's the din? 60, right? Because it's not the truma. Because guys, if you would chop everything up, we're not saying you can be mevatel isa, but this is only asur with the rabbanon. The Rambam paskin in the last chapter, you can be mevatel isa with the rabbanon l'chatchila. That will be a solution. Mince everything. Why is the chaticha chashuv shanei mischabed balatnei ha'archim? Because you receive honor by serving it to guests. If you serve your guest mashed meat, then someone would say no. But if you're going to serve steak, then they're going to say, wow, what a nice host. So what's he saying
exactly? If you have a steak in there, you should pull out one piece.
No. He says if you can recognize the davar ha'asur, and then you remove it. It's not that you're scot-free because then you have to deal with if there was a taruvas of the tam, if there was heat. For that bottle b'shishim, even though it came from a davar ha'chashav, but if the davar ha'chashav is in there, that's where we say I feel about the halacha. What the halacha shabas b'chalav? Also, if it's a chaticha, it's mechalshein. If you can recognize it, then you have no problem. Right, Doivi, because like you said, because the gid anosha doesn't give off tam at all, but you have to remove it. But the problem is, if the gidin, you don't know, you're like me, I don't know what the gid anosha looks like in contrast to other gidin, and you have a mixture of gidin, then hakar loso, because it's called a beria b'fnei atzmai, and it's chashuv v'oisa b'chol halacha zayin v'chein kol balachayim are chashuv and hein ve'enim b'telim. So, for example, you have a short hanisko, they paskin, you got to put the short to death because it killed a person, and it got mixed with 1,000 shvarim. Or you have an egla, arufa means an egla that was designated to be used in that ceremony, got mixed up now with 1,000 other agolas, calves. Or you have a tzipor that was designated, right, mitzoida ashchuta, to be used for the mitzoida. It got mixed with 1,000 siparim. Or a petach hamoed be'elef hamoedim. Kulam asurim bano. Now, what about things that are sold by number? The Rambam is mekatzer here. The Rambam is limits. Davar chashuv, he gave examples of a living thing, a shtikel chaticha, items that are sometimes sold b'minyan, but sometimes sold by weight, are not davar chashuv that Rambam paskins. Aval shar davarim, even though shedar kam limonis, dar kam limonis means that they are sold, but not exclusively. Okay, that's a leniency, and that is again lachamal today. Another Rabbi Zajac. Rambam says that the only time that selling something by item makes a davar chashuv if it's only sold that way. The example is eggs. Normally you buy a dozen, but there are times that when you buy in bulk, you buy a box. So it's no longer considered a davar chashuv. It's not only sold the binger. Halacha 8. Ketzad agudah shel yerek, a bundle from chilei akerem that got mixed up with 200 agudas, an esrog of arla, 200 hakol mutar, because sometimes you sell a box of esrogim, not we pay for every esrog. With inflation this year, it will be $550 because there's only one fleck somewhere. But that he didn't pay for the esrog, he paid for the box. Oh, halacha test. Ali, so the Rambam is saying that when the Mishnah gave those 7 items are considered chashuv everywhere. But if you have in your location something here is considered like Rimoine Badon, that's also called a davar chashuv. The Mishnah only mentioned those 7 because those 7 are always considered chashuv, whether you know it or not. They are objectively chashuv, but subjective is also valid l'chumra. Rambam says, very important. It's the fact that these are not bottle. Everything we're learning, the whole Perek Tezayin, that these things are afilu be'eloflei bottle, that it's so important. It's only midrabanan. And bin doiraisa, min b'minoi bottle b'roiv. Look how far we went. Bottle b'roiv again means ratio 2-1, not 41, 49, and 51.
So in today's day, wouldn't we say an esrog is considered one of these?
No, because if we paskin like Rabbi Zajac, No, that I'm saying no.
Chashuv, you know.
Chashuv, because you decided to pay for it to support that guy. I don't think it has to do with number. I think it has to do with Esher Darkam Limlis, Kol Shadarkam L'Chayder. If you want to go, first of all, it could be you're right. I'm saying the Mishnah, the rule of Kedesh Mapez, are these items only sold? Then he's saying that Chaticha would be a steak. If you're Mechabed, why is a Chaticha? Because when you have a guest and you give him a steak, it's Chashuv. To give a guy a gift an esrog, it's also Chashuv.
Okay? Only Chashuv because we use it for a mitzvah. It's not about the esrog.
That's a difference. In other words, it's only chashuv for the yontif. It's not inherently chashuv. Okay, let's go back. Let's go Google it. I'm sure there's a topic about that. And this is really Negei Lamaisa because this year's Ashmas Hashmita, and you have the Dinam Masrogim, and you have to know, you have to theoretically give it back to the Holy Land, and if they got mixed up. Not a problem with Italian Esrogim, and Moshe Rabbeinu had an Italian Esrog. Italy was created later, doesn't matter. That's only that leg of Italy. Okay, halacha yud. Nafal rimoin echad min ataroivas azois l'shnei demoinim acherim. Ooh, guys, listen to this. So now remember the sugya? Look at the sex fake. Now that we said that it's not bottom, now I don't care with what mixture. Now we're going to learn like this. So the rimoin, arla, it fell into one mixture. I don't care the number. It's not bottom, never. That's called mixture number one. One of this falls into that. Mixture number two, not bottom. That falls into the third. You're good. Svex faker. No, you know why he's writing to Rimoinim? Because Miman of Shach. Midrabanan, it's never bottle. And Midoiraisa, it should be bottle, Beroiv, ratio 2-1. He's giving you a case where on a title level, you're good. But it's not bottle. So it fell into Rimoinim Badon. So that's called mixture number one. From mixture number one of these three fell into mixture number two. So you have the original Isur, fell into one. Now, this is called the Taruvais Hashlishis is Mutter. Because, first of all, could be the Davar Asad that fell into the first group, that for sure there's an Isur here. But when it went from here into there, could be it Bechlal didn't go. Suffix number one. And even if when it went again into another Taruvais, that's another suffix. That's called Svex Fake. Good. Now, in contrast, it's not a numbers game. If the don't make 3 times, make only 2 groups. So make the second group 1,000 rimoinim. It's not going to become better. Because until you get the Sfex Feika, I feel about Elef Lebatel. Kulam Asurim. For they never battle the Raif Elahat Sfex Feikon. She'im Yipol Mina Torevis Hashnia Lim Mokim Acher. Once it goes from the second mix into the third mix, then I know I said, Halacha Yudal. Nis Batsu Egoism Elo Shenes Rukum Bnei Arlo Shalom. So you have a nut that now cracked open. Now no longer is it a nut. It's chash of a nut. Or you have nispardu haramoinim. The pomegranate was taken apart, or the barrels were opened, or the the squash was cut open, or the bread, the home baked bread was cut into pieces. What do we say now? Because the chashivus is no longer here. Like we mentioned. So you have this steak. So we said, steak, a piece of meat, chop everything up, mince everything up. The oil of Bashish, and I want to add something. What did we learn in the last chapter? Something that's only Asur Midrabanan, Mivatlin Isa V'Chatchila. Do that, according to the Rambam. Halacha Yud Beis. Asur lifts. I take back what I said. Big mistake. Says that I'm Halacha Yud Beis, but you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to crack the nuts open. You're not allowed to take the pomegranates apart. You're not allowed to open up the barrels. So I have a question. I'll say that at least I know I've made a mistake. Now the question will be, why don't we say what you said in the last chapter? The imas came Kasha Vita, let's go. Halacha Yud Gimel. It's so good to know that we don't know. That's a lane who's worth it. Ooh, you have a big chapter still coming. And we have a big hanocha still today. We got to finish in 15 minutes. Halacha Yud. So So again, that yeast is one of the things that midrabanan does never bottle. But you got a mixture. You got it? There's two problems. There's a kili akedem issue and there's a truma issue. But when you mix these two yeasts together, so what happens? So think about it. The so'ir shel truma is not a problem for a kohen. So we say, because from a Jewish perspective, the yeast, which is no matter what prohibited, made it into the bread. For a kohen, you didn't have enough of the kili akedem, so it's mutter for a yid. How great is that? It falls into a kedera, and now everything tastes good. It's not the same, it's mitzvah. The beauty is that a kohen can have it. The Rambam will explain what this means soon. I'm calling this the ratio. Or the sefer of this Yudalad. The Rambam is going to explain the sefer first. For example, Ketzad is the second part of Yudalad. This is the meaning of Shloisha Minim Mishema. What does that mean? So'oid of Chitim, a type, right? So'oid of So'oidim. So that's called two minim, wheat and barley, but it's both called yeast. That's called Shemach. Hoyel v'shem So'oid echadu. Einam kimin v'she'einam minoi. They are one min. And therefore, umitztarfin l'shayr behem kedei lachametz bo'isa shel chitim. Because don't forget, everything we're learning now that there's no bittul midrabanan is min deminoi, not min v'she'einam minoi. If it made a isa of chitim a yavaditel, I have some of so'irim. If the tam is shel chitim, that's called min deminoi, and it won't be batal. Imaitam shneim chitim. Or if both of them together had enough power to make a isa of sioidim into bread, as long as the tam that came from these two minim combined to make it into yeast, and the sum total tam is shal sioidim, so it's min b'minoi. Min b'minoi by sioid is never bottle. Also, now halacha tezvav is to explain the ratio of Yudalot. Shloisha shem z'minachat keitzad karpas. It's called river parsley. Parsley that grows in the afar, in the meadows. Karpas that grows in a garden. That's shloisha shemois, 1 min. Since they're 1 min, but start from the tabel. Very good. Halacha tezayin isa michometzes, a yeast isa that's already michometzes. You know, it didn't need it. Or if you have a pot that's already mitubelas, it's already spiced up, more spices falls in. So if that which fell in would have been potent enough that if this isa would not have already been michometzes, it would have made it into a proper bread. Or if the amount of spices that are prohibited fell into a pot, even if the pot would not have already been spiced, if there was enough, even though it was not needed. You know why? Because now this dough can make other doughs chametz. This you can take now from this soup and you can put it into another soup to spread the joy. So it's called effective. But the chametz, then yalla b'shiurim. And what's the normal shir? The normal shir is shishim. By truma echad b'meya or lekilakerem echad b'masayim. Halacha yudzay. Hatruma ma'ila esa arla v'sakile akerem. We're going to learn a couple of halachas. You'll have all the same logic, which means ketzah. Guys, listen to this. Soft truma that fell into tishim v'tisha chulin. Shmuli, 99 against 1, not bottle. Now, v'achar kach nafal lakoil. Chatzi sa'a sher arla. Guys, a half a saw in 100 is the ratio of what? Of 200 to 1. So you have a bittul of 200 against one for the arla, but you only have it if you include the truma. You are allowed to use the truma, which makes it's problematic. It's meduma. But since the 200 to 1 is not arla against the arla, the not arla doesn't have to be one type. It can even be something that is a problem by itself. It's mitzvah, that's a leniency. You got it? Ein kanisar arla. Because you have 201, even though the 201 is chulin and truma together.
Only a kohen can do it.
Only a kohen can eat it because because of the truma. Or if the kili akerim fell in, there's no more kili akerim. Should I all of echad Messiah? Even though some of the Messiah is truma, let me say better. Okay, good. He's going to give many other cases. Arla and kili akerim combined to nivavatla truma. In other words, arla is problematic. Let's go. Ketzah meya social arla. He's giving you these big numbers. You have 100 saw of arla or 100 saw of kili akerim. Now, what would you need? Shenaflu le'eslim elef shel chulin. In other words, you have the ratio of 201. Nasis kol hatarevis eslim elef amen. Now you have 20,100 saw, and it's bottled. And now the ratio that you would need of 101 of truma, you have the small ratio. If you combine everything together, only then do you have 101 against the truma. But don't forget that you are including the arla that was bottled, but you are allowed to do that. And v'tala truma be'echorameya. Afa pisha mixes ameya my lois from arla kilei akedem. Beautiful. Allah yutas chen. And all types of mixtures. Arla could be mala kilei akedem. Kilei akedem could be mala arla. I'll tell you better. Kili akerem could be mala kili akerem, and arla could be mala arla. For example, Kate, Masayim social arla, or 200 of kili akerem. Now, what will be the ratio, Shmuli? Yeah, beginning with 200. What will be the ratio of 200 against 1? It falls into 40,000 sof chulin. The bottom line is you have the ratio of 200 to 1, and therefore the arla was bottled. Now, another Masayim saw Usa Shel Arla or Shel Kili Akedem. No, it's once, you know the word is, we don't say Chayzer V'Neir, if you remember this. We don't say Chayzer V'Neir. Once it's bottle, it's good. Kiven Shabbatul is on Javat Chila, Nasa Hakol Mamish Kechulin Amutarim. Very good. Now, guys, Halacha Chav, we're going to start learning about klipa. Klipa is also like arla itself. Klipa was used for dyes, not to dye as water dynamis, but dye as to make a color. Beged shetzavoi beklipe arla. Since we paskin that the klipin are usher like the arla, the whole klipa, by the way, al pi Hasidus is a one big klipa. Arla's klipa, so the klipa are by that klipa. You saw it. Now nisara bachedim. The beged gets mixed. You know what you need? Wow, you need to have a bittul of 201. Because it's min b'minay. The chein tafshil shebishla beklipe arla, pas shafa beklipe arla, or bekilei akedem. So first of all, you start off a tafshil ba'pas. She'ein hanu yosi nikeres. Shahadei hanu yosi nikeres bohen. No, in other words, it's not bottle, number one. And now if this gets mixed with something else, we learned is the width of 2 thumbs. If you had that amount of thread or of garment that was dyed with arla product, that's chashuv. Yalla, you need 200 against 1. However, we're speaking about the powder dye, the dye itself. Liquid dye is already bottled b'roiv. Number one, there's no substance. It's the liquid of the dye. Powdered is the substance. There's a few kulas here. Something that comes from the klipa, the liquid from it, since there's no mamashos over here, and the fact that when it will be used, you're going to have roiv of other non-problematic dyes. We combine them together, and we allow bittul b'roiv. Tanur she'esiko b'klipi arlo b'keli kalayim. Let's go into the whole idea of one goydem, two goydems. So you have an oven. The oven was heated up using klipe arla klipe keli akarim. The Rambam adds a leniency. You know, when you have a earthenware oven, the first time that you heated it up, that made the oven into a final product, even though you did it for a chadash, for sure by Yosh. The only problem is that this heat is problematic. The oven is not problematic. So what should you do? Wait for the oven to cool down, yutzan, even if you use that to heat up the oven. And then you're good. However, in bishul by kodim sheyutzan, bein pas bein tafshil, harei zo aser bahana, sheshvach atzei isur is in the pas or in the tafshil. That's because the klipa was in there or the firewood was in there. But if garaf eskol ha'esh, v'achar kach bishul yafa b'choyme sholtana, which you should not have done, but you remove the be'en, harei zo muter, sharei atzei isur hal chulam, halacha chav gimel. What about utensils? Now, an oven, guys, when you put something in an oven, the oven, until you warm it up with wood, is doing nothing. When you put something in a pot or in a cup, it's holding it together. It makes it more problematic. So, ka'arais or kaisais or kedeirais utzaloichiais. If you have kalim that you finalize them, you needed heat. The heat came from klipe arlo. That's a problem. These kalim are asurim bano. Again, Aya oven, the Rambam says that a tanur chadash was also finalized because the tanur can only be used later when you put wood in it. That wood is davar hamuter. And yet when you place it in the tanur for itself, big deal that it's in the tanur. The tanur's not holding it.
Huh? The last word I have chadash. So there's your same concept.
No. Okay.
Same idea.
Halacha chavdal pas shebishla al gabe gecholam shel atzi orlam. Since you're not using the wood, you're using the coals that came from wood muteres because shekim shenasu gecholim alach yisuram, even though they're still glowing. Wow. Now kedeira shebishel oisa beklipe arla. That's the pot itself, not oy bekli akerem uba atzi heter. Since the pot itself was finalized, and when you put food in a pot, that's like, even before you cook it, the pot is holding it, it's a problem. Even though the pot was not only made with the davar ha'asur, zevas hagoyim. Shebeshoshen is bashla machmas atzei isur adayin lebo atzei heter. When you put it in the pot, prior to you warming it up, you're already using a davar ha'asur. Then it's a mix of bishul atzei heter and a mix of isur. Okay, Allah chafei. Nitiyah shar arlo. You planted an arlo and it became mixed with other natiyas. This is a common thing. You have an aruga shel kilei akarim, you have a patch that's mixed with other patches. You don't know which one is arlo. You know what the Rambam says? Here we say because you're being mavatal lechatchila midrabanan. And now that you harvested, you know you have the ratio. But if it's less than that, since midrabanan, right, you don't have that bittul of 201, and everything will be us. Now the lama he tirulay look at lechatchila. Because if he would have done, he would have removed it. Because we're not using the rabbanon, we're using the concept that what should this guy do? No one will plant a plant of arla inside other plants. And of course, if he would know, he would remove it. So instead of him losing all the produce, we allow him to harvest it. And if you have the ratio of 201, it's going to be okay. You're using the sraf to make cheese. Or you're making the cheese. In all of these cases, even though
and you would have a share.
It's called davar hamaymed. It's much worse than spice. Just to understand something, when you add spice, You're adding something. Maimed is you're making it. Halacha chav zayin. Ha'ol lekili hakerem din ha'peder shalahem sheyisarfu. V'amashkon yikveru l'pnei sheyef shalisar v'amashkon. You have to push to get rid of it. Halacha chav ches. Yain shenisnasnech l'avodah zarah shenisar v'mayayin. Oisar hakol bano k'may shehu b'yarnu. B'med dvarim amurim v'shehu rak hayayin ha'mutar al tifo sheyayin nesach. Let's go into this mixture. If you are pouring the good into the bad, guys, what happens when you pour? So in halacha, there are two types of pouring. There's pouring a lot at one time, and then there's a pouring it tipa tipa. When you pour something tipa tipa, even here, at times we'll say, it's called rishoin, bottom. If the bottom is good and the top is problematic and it's going drop, bottom. If the top is problematic, the bottom is good, and you're pouring it out of a small container, which means it's not flowing in. I want you to know that Rashi is much more machmer. Rashi writes in the sugya, it's only mutter b'hanam. The Rambam says it's mutter, even b'shasiyah. But ira min achavis. But if you pour it from a big barrel, that means the flow is stark. Bein she'ira. Here it doesn't make a difference what's on top and what's on the bottom. And what does that do? It creates a nitzoik. Nitzoik is a problem. Very good. The sort of a mixture, not the way we pouring in. What do you do? We already spoke this out. It was yesterday, 2 days ago, that this is a tarovis, that there was a time when it was separated. So here we can be lenient by just removing that when you sell it, not the wine. When you sell it, the money of one barrel has to be thrown away. But you can't have enough from everything. That's only because you sold it. It's only because if you would not have sold it, you can't have any of it. Now we're speaking about cases shmuli where you can have water that's also problematic. Water we began. The kravas avodah zarah is even mayim. No, it's one mashke good, one mashke bad. The din is b'noisen tam. Why b'noisen tam? Min b'she'ein aminoi. How did we begin today? Min halacha pedik tezvav. B'noisen tam. But if the mashka asur falls into the mashka mutar, like we learned in halacha chav ches, and it's not coming in stark, rishon bottle, vusha yurak, mitzilzil cotton, sheymedik v'iramat ma'at. Only if it's coming not with a strong flow. But how do you have mind that's asur? You're going to show in a bottom like the crevice of a people worshipped it. People use it in a service of an idol. Halacha lamed aleph, bar shal yayin. You have a boy. And then so what do we do? Inside the yayin. What do you have over here? You have and my you have the din of batal tam. Then hare hamayim rabban olam batal oisai. And the hakol mutar halacha lamed beis yain nesach it falls shalanavim. It falls on grapes, guys. The din is that grapes don't absorb wine. All you need to do is rinse it off, and then mutar machila. But if the grapes were cracked, then it goes inside. Ben shoya yain yosh ber yain is chodesh. So yes, im nasum tam banov mari yosem banov. Im la v'nem tos bachilom. Halacha lamed gimel.
Check those.
Agoy. Halacha lamed gimel. Nafal agav te'enim. Figs. By figs, you can always eat the figs because yain is plaguing figs. Halacha lamed dalet. Yain nesach that falls on chitin. Now, guys, chitin has cracks. They are sort of machilam, but it's not like grapes. However, they are mutadas ba'ana'ah. Because when you sell them, you're not going to charge for the wine. You make bread and you sell the bread to goyim, not in front of Yidden. And as we didn't learn yet, but you cannot buy bread from a goy. If you sell it in front of a Jew, then they'll sell it to another Jew. But the Yid won't know who we got. He will have the manas. Because the final halacha, yayin nesach that became chametz, that became a vinegar. And the nos follow teichomet sheichar. So what do we do? You know, if it would be min she'ena minoi, what would we say? B'nois and tam. But here we got a problem. Now it's vinegar. Now it's min b'minoi. Oise b'choshu with pnei shu b'minoi. And what's the word? Min b'minoi. Min b'minoi, my friends. Midrabanan, this chapter by Yayin Nesach is not a bottle. Min b'she'enoi minoi, only chametz b'pesach. So the question is it wine? Is it now? It's vinegar. Min b'minoi, it's bottle. The yain shenesaret im chametz. Here it's min b'she'enoi minoi, right? Bein shel chametz the yain. Bein shel chametz misharim oisim b'noisim tam. Givaldik. Wow.
The worst thing would be vinegar that came from the INSF that fell into other vinegar.
That's a problem. Now it's called min b'minoi, and it's never going to be bottle.